I've treated thousands of addicts in my medical practice since 1987. I've seen people try all kinds of different methods of changing their lives and getting into recovery from their addiction. Now, it's true that there are different methods that can be applied to the problem. But after working my own recovery and observing others attempt to get sober or quit their addiction, I still believe the best method is a combination of medical care, counseling, education, and working a 12-step recovery program. Now, I don't know how familiar you are with the 12 steps. You might have heard good things about the program, or maybe heard negative things about the 12-step program, and it's caused you to have a bad attitude about trying the program. Could be you tried the 12-step program but failed to stay in recovery for an extended time. Either way, my hope for you today is that you'll give me an opportunity to guide you through the 12 steps in a way that is proven successful for the vast majority of people like you. Now, I'm not a spokesperson for AA or NA or any of the other 12-step programs. I'm just offering you some thoughts and suggestions that might help you successfully work the steps. So today, I'm going to ask you to look at step 1. This means you're going to have to take a hard look at yourself. Step 1 says, we admitted that we were powerless over alcohol or drugs or food or one of the process addictions such as gambling or sexual compulsivity, and that our lives had become unmanageable. Admitting that you're powerless over alcohol or drugs or your addiction probably seems like the exact opposite of what you need to do to conquer your problem and get into recovery. The natural instinct likely resists the idea of powerlessness and goes against your own feeling of self-preservation. But it's a paradox. The strange thing about addiction is that the more you try and exert your own resolve and power to stop, the worse the addiction becomes. It becomes an obsession. You think about it and eventually experience the compulsion to do it again, even though you know the risk of more negative consequences. You find yourself driven to perform an act that is really irrational, and it's because of your compulsion to drink, use drugs, overeat, or act out whatever your process addiction is again. So, it's your mental state that precedes your indulgence in your addiction, and that is the crux of the problem. Now, do you believe that if you continue your addiction, it will continue to create more problems in your life? Well, if so, why haven't you quit permanently? You know, if you had to walk down Elm Street to get to work every day, and the same thug beat you up and robs you every day, wouldn't it seem obvious that you're going to experience the same thing every time you go down Elm Street? No matter how much willpower you exert, this guy beats the tar out of you every time you pass that way. So going the same way, time after time, and expecting a new result is really self-delusional thinking. Once you admit that he's stronger than you and he's defeated you, then you may decide that you need to take another path to reach your destination. Well, it's the same way with your failed attempts to try and conquer your addiction by yourself. It's more powerful than your self-will. It has beaten you over and over and robbed you of important things in your life. You know, when you were a child, you didn't say, hey, I want to grow up and be an alcoholic or an addict. No one expects that that will happen to them. No one ever thinks they're going to become an alcoholic or an addict. You did it because it felt good. You liked the way it changed your mood. And of course, this doesn't happen immediately. Sometime in your past, you had the ability to stop and, as we say, stay stopped on your own, but not anymore. At some point, months, maybe years ago, you crossed something called the invisible line from abuse to dependence, and you lost the option to permanently stop your addiction on your own. If it weren't true, you wouldn't be watching this video right now. Some say that once you cross that invisible line, you're caught in a trap of feeling unhappy with it and unhappy without it. But there is a way out once you admit defeat. You're going to have to rely on help from outside yourself to start recovering. Now, in the 12-step literature, it says only by admitting utter and complete defeat are we able to take the first steps toward liberation and strength. You have to realize that self-reliance and self-confidence are of no use to you in fighting this disease. In fact, it's a statistical fact that alcoholics and addicts almost never recover on their own resources. So when you admit defeat and you realize how powerless you are to conquer your addiction by yourself, that realization becomes the bedrock on which to rebuild a new way of living for yourself. So that's what we're talking about when we're referring to surrendering. Surrender also means that you're willing to listen to members of the 12-step program. You become teachable. Now notice that there are two parts to step one: admitting that you are powerless over your addiction and admitting that your life has become unmanageable. You're probably thinking, my life's not that unmanageable. Well, addiction is a pathologic relationship with alcohol or mood-altering chemical or an addictive behavior that you know is causing life-damaging consequences, and you cannot permanently stop it. If you take an honest look at those life-damaging consequences, you may begin to realize just how unmanageable your life has become. Have made pledges to stop your use of alcohol or drugs or stop your compulsive addiction, and maybe you succeeded for a little while, only to start up again days, weeks, or months later. That is what we mean by powerlessness. Now, you can fool yourself all you want, but if you're honest with yourself, you probably already know that your problem is beyond your ability to control it. The basic principle is this: have you continued in your addiction knowing that it has already caused problems in some area of your life? You know, living in a state of denial and delusion won't bring you any closer to solving your problem. So, are you ready to see what areas of your life have been impacted negatively by your addiction? The emotional impact of addiction is ubiquitous. Have you experienced strong feelings of guilt or shame associated with your addiction? Do you seem to have mounting problems with anxiety, depression, or maybe having wide mood swings? Maybe you've seen a physician and you were placed on something to regulate your mood, an antidepressant, but it didn't work because you never addressed your addiction. Have you begun to feel lonely and isolate from others? Have there been health consequences resulting from your addiction? Have you continued to drink, use drugs, or continue your food addiction or process addiction, even though you know that it has caused or exacerbated some physical illness? That could be anything from a variety of health issues. Some examples would be like headaches or acid reflux, maybe ulcers, high blood pressure, heart disease, sleep problems, pancreatitis, dental problems, liver inflammation or damage, hepatitis B or C, or even HIV infection, sexual problems, sexually transmitted diseases, loss of physical strength and stamina, frequent infections, irritable bowel, diabetes, skin easily bruising, tremor, weight gain or loss, poor nutrition, or accidents with injuries. Have you experienced legal consequences? Have you been involved in traffic accidents while you were impaired using alcohol or some mood-altering drug? Have you ever been arrested for DUI or something else related to drug or alcohol use? And what are the social consequences of your addiction? How are others responding to you because of your addiction? Do you become angry when someone approaches you about your drinking or addiction? Are you experiencing marital problems or problems with your significant other or your parents or your children or friends as a result of your addiction? Have there been episodes of verbal or physical abuse? Has it caused any problems with you missing work or maybe underperforming at work or even losing a job as a result of it? And what about financial consequences? Have you been reckless and impulsive with your spending, or maybe you've incurred huge debt or made poor investment decisions, or maybe you've even gone through bankruptcy related to your addiction? And usually there are also spiritual consequences. Now, I'm talking about behaving in ways that go against your own morals, values, and ethics. Have you become more self-centered and more self-absorbed? Have you found yourself lying and being a manipulator, stealing, acting out sexually, showing little regard for the effects of your behavior on other people, and maybe little or no connection with any higher power or God? Okay, so be honest with yourself now. Some of these things do describe you, don't they? Now, if you can admit that, then you're a little closer to being able to admit that you're powerless right now over your addiction, and you may be starting to see that your life is becoming unmanageable. That's really all you have to do to take step one. You just identify the problem and you own it. So if you haven't already started going to 12-step meetings, it's time to start. Maybe you already know somebody who attends those meetings. You could call that person and ask if you could go with them to a meeting. That might make it easier on you. But if you don't, get out your local phone book, or you could search on a search engine like Google and you can find a meeting. You know, wishing that you could get control of your addiction is just a desire for something without putting forth any effort to receive it. So you're going to have to put some work into this, and here are my suggestions about starting your program. When you go to the meetings, ask how you can find a sponsor. That's someone who's going to help you through this program. Make a pledge to yourself that you will have a sponsor within 2 weeks of starting the 12-step program. Why? Because you can't do this alone, and you certainly can't work the steps by yourself. That sponsor is going to become the most important person in your life for months to come. He or she is going to be like a tutor in a 12-step program and will also become your confidant that you could tell anything to in confidence. Both are necessary for you to receive the full benefit of the 12-step program. You should talk with your sponsor in person or by telephone at least 5 times weekly in the early months of your recovery. Go to those 12-step meetings every day for the first 90 days if it's possible for you to do so. After that, you can rely on the direction of your sponsor, who will suggest to you how many meetings you should attend every week. Going to 12-step meetings without working a program is about the same as going to a football game, watching it, and believing that you're playing football. Attending 12-step meetings as a spectator won't keep you sober for very long. You're going to have to work the program, but the rewards are going to be well worth it.